Yeah, because these pins don't matter in this situation. They do have contacts and they do have terminals, but we're not going to worry about those because we're using tip and ring, and that's one pair. And it comes in on 4 and 5, and actually it goes out on 1 and 8 and gets to the telephone that way. But if you don't have an alarm system plugged into this RJ31X, here's how it works. You've got dial tone coming in to 4 and 5, right? Now, internally, you can see this goes down and this connects to pins 4 and 5. Well, how does it connect to 4 and 5 and also 1 and 8? There's something called a shorting bar in here, or a bridging bar. I'll interchange those. I put shorting bar here, and that bar shorts between pins 5 and 8 and 1 and 4, and it lifts up and down, and we'll show you in another video how that works. And so when there's no mod plug, RJ45 plugged into this, what happens is this shorting bar goes down and it makes contact pin 5 to pin 8, pin 4 to pin 1. So let's go back up to here. Where do pins 1 and 8 go? They go out to your telephone. So if nothing's plugged into this, circuit goes like this. Dial tone in to 4 and 5, comes out to pins 4 and 5, and then there wouldn't be any dial tone if there was something plugged into this and it were not an alarm panel, because an alarm panel has controls we'll talk about. But again, let me back up a little bit. I'm going to retrace this with no plug into the RJ31X. There's no alarm panel. So if an alarm panel gets pulled and they put a wireless, all they need to do is pull this plug out and your phone will keep working. So your dial tone comes in on 4 and 5. It goes internally. Here's pins 4 and 5, but your phone is actually connected to terminals 1 and 8. So how is it going to get the dial tone to the phone? What's cool, if it's unplugged, the shorting bar has a little spring in it, and the shorting bar pops back down in it. Again, it is a copper shorting bar, and what it does is it shorts out pins 5 and 8 and pins 1 and 2. What's that do? It sends whatever came in on 5 over to 8, and it sends whatever is connected to 4 over to 1. Well, where do those go to? If we go back internally, we've got 1 and 8. This is our internal connectivity. Here's terminals 1 and 8, goes back to terminals 1 and 8. Boom. There you've got dial tone. So with something unplugged, it'll still work. With something plugged in, it works. How does it work plugged in? It's actually pretty easy. Comes in on 4 and 5, all right? Now, you've got something plugged in. These shorting bars, when you plug a mod plug into this, these shorting bars pop up, and no longer is 5 and no longer are terminals or pins 5 and 8 touching. No longer are pins 1 and 4 touching, because that shorting bar just goes up and it doesn't touch these pins anymore. So you don't have a short between 5 and 8 and 1 and 2. What happens? It just goes to 4 and 5. Remember, your dial tones here go down to 4 and 5. Well, if something gets plugged into this, it's going to get dial tone. But how do you get dial tone back out for your telephone? It's awesome. It goes in. Now watch this. Here's your pins. What happens with the plug, this is like a plug. These plugs that plug into an RJ31X are typically 4 wires. This is that plug that goes in. Pins 4 and 5 are connected to pins 4 and 5 inside this panel. There are different configurations, but you're supposed to have something that this plugs into. Actually, the alarm panel is supposed to have a cord. It's got a 4 conductor cord, and it's supposed to have an RJ45 mod plug on it. And that's this right here, connecting. I just did the pin out to make it consistent. But this is basically a pigtail cord. It goes into their alarm panel. It terminates onto dial tone, it terminates inside their alarm panel onto what they call tip and ring 1. And then there's a tip and ring 2 in that alarm panel for fire panels. But this is just one phone line, one RJ31X, one pigtail cord going from the alarm panel. This is plugged into your RJ31X. So we've got dial tone coming through here, going down to pins 4 and 5. Pins 4 and 5 are feeding dial tone right to the alarm panel. Now the alarm panel has dial tone. But do you really want to waste a $50 a month or $40 a month on sitting on an alarm panel that never gets used? No, you don't. You want to be able to share that, to actually use that line in your business for a telephone. Or I put a telephone, this could be a telephone system, and this could be line 2 or 3 or 4, or this could be line 1. But that is your telephone that you're using. What happens is this alarm panel constantly monitors for dial tone coming out. As long as there's dial tone coming out, it's cool. And as long as there's nobody pushing a button or any alarm going, or smoke or burglar, then it's cool. It then, internally in this alarm panel, it sends that dial tone, it bridges it in here, kind of just like this bridging bar, but it's computerized, it's a little processor. It takes this dial tone, since it doesn't need it, sends it back out on these 2 wires, which is 1 and 8. Now these 2 wires go out, and what do? They connect to pins 1 and 8 on your RJ31X. Where do those go? Up to here. They go to terminals 1 and 8. What do we have tied down to terminals 1 and 8? Our phone line for our phone, or our phone system. So it works really good. Now what happens is, on a continual basis, then this alarm panel is monitoring voltage dial tone. Basically, it doesn't need it. It pushes it right back out to 1 and 8. You've got phone. If the alarm all of a sudden senses smoke or whatever, what it does is it seizes that line and it closes off this outlet. It takes the dial tone, it utilizes that dial tone, and it calls the monitoring company just like a regular telephone, and it gives them warning that there's something going on with that line. So it seizes that line. So you can see if there's an emergency and somebody's on this phone, what happens? The telephone line goes in, but the alarm panel, through programming, sees that it's had a command to seize that line. It seizes that line, it uses it, it goes off hook, it dials the number of the monitoring company, and now they know they've got an alarm. It cuts off the dial tone to 1 and 8. Now your phone won't work. Even if you were on that phone and that alarm needed that line, it seizes that line because it's wired properly. It comes in and out properly, and it has to go in and out properly. You can't be transposing these either. It has to be done this way. You don't want to do it another way. You don't start mixing wires. And if I'm wiring one of these with a basic 4-pair cable, blue, orange, green, brown, I'll usually take one of the, I'll let my, again, I just go by blue, orange, green, brown. My first pair is blue, then my second is orange. So I'll usually come in with blue and out with orange. And then if you need that cable for another one, because most fire alarm panels need 2 RJ31Xs, you can use that 4-pair cable. You can use your blue and orange for line 1 and your green and brown for line 2. So we'll get into that more with our demonstrations and our lab work. But again, alarm plugged in, there's no contact with these shorting bars. Comes in here, goes to 4 and 5, from 4 and 5 into the alarm panel. Alarm panel monitors, sees there's no need to use the dial tone. It doesn't need it because there's no alarm. It sends that dial tone back out to 1 and 8. 1 and 8 is connected to your phone. Pick up your phone, it works. The alarm needs it. It shuts off. It seizes that dial tone. Even if somebody's on that phone line, it hangs it right up and it grabs it because it's coming into the alarm panel, and the alarm panel controls if it goes out or not. So when you're having a lot of issues with your line that's on your alarm panel, it's probably one of the biggest issues, mostly in older businesses.